What's up, everybody? My name is Dan, and this is the Hard Knocks Talks podcast, where we talk about inspiring addiction recovery stories, drug policy, and everything in between. I am joined in the studio with my wife and co-host, Donna. Donna, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Doing good. We're having
Yeah,
some...
sorry, I was bringing up YouTube on my phone and I got busted. I thought I was going to get in shit for cat scrolling again.
No, I'm sick of giving you shit for that. Just want to throw a thanks to Patty Droughty from the Saskatchewan Health Authority in Melfort, Saskatchewan, for having Donna and I come out in person to deliver 2 keynotes to foster productive conversations about substance use with their service providers and community members. The audience was great, and Patty did a great job of making us feel like we were right at home. So shout out to you, Patty. And let's see, what else do we got? Okay, so now let's focus on tonight's guest. Here's a clip from a conversation I had with him earlier today.
So when I was 16 years old, social services took me out of my house, moved into group home with a bunch of kids in a different school system, ended up in my own apartment at 16 years old, and drinking was what we did. 400 days ago, yesterday, I was drinking after work and drove home drunk. I ended up rolling my truck. The next day, when my wife took me to the impound to get my personal effects out of the vehicle, I saw the truck. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I was going to die, or worse, I was going to kill somebody else.
All right, if you are struggling with the substance use of a loved one or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms, reach out to Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm. If you are in search of private inpatient addictions treatment, check out Prairie Sky Recovery Centre, located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. To make contact and learn more about all of today's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below. What is up, Mike?
Hey Dan, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Entering the Christmas season, and I know you and I talked a little bit before the show. I'm grateful that you were able to step in on such short notice. I think it was like today, like it's show day, and I had a last minute conversation or a last minute cancellation, and yeah, I'm glad that our paths crossed. And is there anything that you'd like to say before we jump in tonight?
No, just wanted to say thanks for having me on the show. I know it was a little bit of a last minute thing, but always happy to share my story in the hopes that it helps even one person. So
awesome. Well, let's get at it.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
To go into foster care at 16 years old, I mean, traditionally when we hear stories, it tends to happen a lot earlier than that. So when you said 16 years old, that piqued my interest. So what was it like at home growing up? Did it start out good and then go sideways, or what did that look like?
So my mom had me when she was 16, and the guy that was with her, not my biological father, but he was with my mother before I was born. So he was obviously the father of my sister. And, that was all well and good, but it was always, things were just a little bit different between me and her. And things probably, got a little different between us from that point on. That's where I can really sort of pinpoint the differences. And like I said, it wasn't bad for the most part. When I started, got to be a teenager, things got a little more stressful. I was, trying to be a teenager, trying to do things the way I wanted to do them and stuff like that. But when I did live there, like I didn't really touch alcohol, and certainly I hadn't even touched drugs at the point that social services took me out of the house. I did the typical stuff, like over at a buddy's place, his parents are gone, we got into their liquor cabinet, but it happened once or twice. Like it wasn't a big drinking thing. And for whatever reason, the physical abuse started. And, I think my parents were going through some financial issues. Now, certainly not to make excuses for them, but, whatever it was, like the physical abuse was real. And to the point where, like I can remember probably, 14, 15 years old, because I had grown up on Northwest Territories before we moved back to the East Coast. And hunting was one of the things we did. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed one night with my shotgun in my mouth.
At 14?
Thankfully, 14 or 15, I not exactly sure
Wow.
of the age, but like again, I don't know if it's normal teenager stuff, but the stuff like, I want to listen to hair metal, and they wouldn't let me listen to certain bands because it was the devil. And
Were you raised in a Christian house?
no, that's the funny part. When my sister was born, it was adamant that we both got baptized, and we both got baptized on the same day. She was only a couple months old. I was 8 years old. And then when we were in the Northwest Territories, after a couple of years, I started going to church on my own, and they'd be like, "Well, just you go to church if you want, but don't be bringing that religion shit home."
Mm.
So it was a real,
And also don't
real
listen to that
weird,
devil music.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's just one of the last things, and that got to be with the abuse was, yeah, I was just barely 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And on a radio contest, I won a pair of jeans. Like they were, back in the 80s, RG Browns were, sort of a higher end jean, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, I won these jeans, and I wanted to look like Joe Elliott from Def Leppard. So I bleached them and ripped them all up and wore them to school. And then they freaked out when I got home because I went out in public, and I was representing them when I was out. And the two of them held me down and took the clothes off me while they were hitting me. And it's just, that was with them that was my breaking point with it. So talked to my guidance counselor the next day and
So
ended up having social.
so this was a relief to you then when social services came knocking? Like, did you feel like they were saving you, or did you not want to go, or what did that look like?
No, they were definitely saving me.
Yeah.
Like I said, the next day I went to my guidance counselor. I explained what was going on at home, about the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, and yeah. So basically, social services came to the school, talked to me with my guidance counselor and principal, and then took me home. When they took me home, my mother wasn't there, but my father was, and my little sister,
Mm-hmm.
and just sat with social services. Three of us sat around the table, talked for an hour or two, and then they put me in emergency group home placement that night before
Wow.
they moved me to a more permanent one a couple of days later.
What was your first few weeks like? Did you feel like you had found a new home?
I was glad to be out of the environment, but it definitely wasn't like finding a new home.
Mm.
I was like I don't know, scared cat. It's just everything, just on edge about everything.
Mm.
I didn't know any of these people I was living with. I didn't know the workers. I didn't know any of the kids because I was out in the country, and they moved me to a group home in the city, and I didn't know any of these people. And then I got, after a couple of days, I got put in a whole new school.
Mm.
So, and this is before, this is 1989. So, no, there's no cell phones. Like a couple of friends that I did have, trying to talk to them on the phone. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them knew because all of a sudden I was gone from school, stuff like that. But
When did the substance use start to become a problem?
the substance use started, well, like I said, I was in the group home for 2 or 3 months, and just the way the system was here back then, I timed out of that particular group home. And my options were to go back home, which I didn't want, and the facility didn't want, or I could go get my own apartment. So I ended up getting my own apartment because I had started working a job. I wasn't working quite full time because I was still going to high school. I was in grade 11 at the time. But yeah, so got an apartment through some people I worked with at the Tim Hortons. Somebody was, knew somebody that was looking for a roommate, and so I moved in with these two guys that were, a couple years older than me. I think they were 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
I was just barely 16 when I moved in. When you're 16 years old and you're going to school and you're hanging out with your friends, like, well, you want a place to drink? Well, I got a spot. So it was, became, I wouldn't say popular, but the people I was friends with, I was popular because everyone just come hang at my place and we can do whatever we wanted to do.
Did you start to feel like something was wrong, like with what you were doing? Like, was there, when you were growing up at home, was it like, don't do drugs, drugs are bad, don't drink, drinking is bad? Was this like a whole new thing for you?
My dad drank. Never that I remember really excessively, but what I do remember is being a toddler in the early 70s. My parents were young. They'd have their friends over, and I was a cute little toddler that would go around the party and get sips out of everybody's beer, because they would laugh about it and everything was good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when they would finally sort of cut me off, so to speak, I had clued in that my old man always left the bottom mouthful or so in the beer, and when he'd go put his empty in the case by the fridge and go get another one, there was different times I was told that they found me asleep on top of the case, and the empties were actually empty. So drinking was never a taboo thing in the house at all. But when I got out and, I'm in this new environment and I don't have any rules and I don't have anybody to tell me anything, and I would start drinking, and when I drank, just the noise between my ears would quiet down. It just didn't have that, what was going on, or
Mm-hmm.
like the friend groups at this high school I was trying to go to, and I didn't really fit in because the school was sort of in a richer part of town. It's just the way the geographics worked. I ended up going there. Like, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be sitting alone in the library at lunch, listening to girls complain to her friends that her parents took the visa away because she spent $500 on clothes the previous weekend, and I've got like $15 to spend on mac and cheese for a fucking week for groceries.
Were there ever any stints, like after you started drinking heavily, was there ever any stints where you quit? Like maybe something bad happened? I know when we talked before today, you had a lot of car accidents that happened before the one that sort of drove you into sobriety. Pardon the pun, drove you into sobriety.
Yeah. Uh, no, like once I started drinking at 16, I'd say by the time I hit 17, it was a pretty regular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Different friend groups. It's ironic because after living on my own for about 4 or 5 months, I almost ended up going out to live in Alberta with my aunt and uncle. And at the 11th hour, my mother begged my father to ask me to move home, because she didn't want me being across the country or whatever, even though the relationship was all fucked up. But anyway, my my first thing out of my mouth, never mind the abuse, never mind that they physically abused me, never mind that there's emotional abuse. My first thing in my mouth was, well, if I come home, I'm still going to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and
What did they
I don't know
say?
why. Yeah, yeah, just let me come home, and I could still go out. I wasn't drinking at the house, but if I went out with my friends, like, I didn't have any sort of curfew or anything like that. It was more or less just sort of to help me finish school,
Mm-hmm.
which I did. But anytime, like in the summers, I would always be, there was a resort community here that, I'd go out and live out there for the summer. I think the next summer, uh, when I was 17, going on to 18, just graduating high school, that's when I basically moved out, completely. But by that time, I was basically living in a beer commercial. It's like all we did was drink.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that really straight through, it was probably 5 days a week anyway that we drank.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been like that right through into my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I met my ex-wife, that sort of slowed down a little bit when we started dating.
Was she a
But by
drinker
that
too?
time, no, not really. I mean, she drank, but I'd call her a normie, so to speak. But
Mm-hmm.
but she would drink, but it was nothing like what me and my friends would do.
Mm-hmm.
And but like I said, by this time I sort of just started my professional career. I was in the construction industry, and I used to travel a lot for work. So when I was on the road, I'd be away for weeks at a time. And when I was on the road and we're working construction, like, you worked your 12 or your 14 hours a day, But, basically went back to the room, got cleaned up, and then you're out at the bar till bar closed at 2, go home, go back to the room, get a few hours sleep, and you're back on site by, 6:30, 7 in the morning, and then, rinse, wash, repeat. So that continued on through while we ended up being married for 9 years.
Did she know about the drinking when you were on the road?
Oh yeah, she knew. She would call me on it, and she said, "Oh, you're drinking." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm drinking." I'm like, what? I'm not home. I'm still going to work. I'm still, money's still in the bank account. We can still pay rent, or eventually we still pay a mortgage and all that stuff. So it wasn't, that was my excuse.
You were always drinking and driving, like you admitted to me before the show today, that this wasn't like a new thing to write off vehicles or whatever. But were there ever any scares that you had prior to the one that finally brought you into recovery that made you sort of open your eyes for a minute?
I'm absolutely ashamed to say it now, but it definitely was not uncommon for me to drink and drive. It just wasn't. After my ex-wife and I, when we split up, and that's really when the daily drinking started. And it started just, in the evenings. I'd stop at a bar, I'd have a few, probably more than I should, and then drive home. And then there'd be times where, I had way more than I should have and drove home.
Were you drinking the pain away? Like, were you torn up by this divorce? Was this drinking, were you blaming it on her? It's her fault I'm like this, or what was that like?
No, I don't know if I was blaming her. In reality, really, I initiated the end of the relationship. So we lived in the East Coast. We moved up to Ontario for a few years. She was originally from Ontario, and then I had an opportunity to get a promotion, and we moved back. When we agreed to move back, she was pregnant with our son, and our son was born a few months before we ended up coming back to the East Coast. She was a teacher, and when we moved back, she never did put her notice in with the school system that she worked at in Ontario. A couple weeks before the school year, she just decides, well, I'm going to go back up to Ontario. I'm going to go back to my job, and I'm going to live with my parents. So, and this was supposed to be the normal relationship. She was going to be up there. I was going to be here. I had to maintain the house and do all that. So anyway, not to go into about my failed marriage too much, but it, so when I opted to end it, because things weren't good between us, and there's a lot of reasons, and I can honestly say, like, when I was home, my drinking was never an issue. My drinking was an issue when I traveled, but at home, I never drank. I was never, verbally abusive, cheated, anything at all like that.
So what was the difference then? Because like for me it was, and I'm not going to go into my story too much either, but it was like for me it was the opposite, because I'm a tradesman too. I worked as a welder for 16 years. I'd hit the road, but when I was on the road, I wouldn't drink because I was away from that social environment. I had no desire. But when I came home, it was the opposite. So what do you think the difference was then? Do you think that your wife was like, because she wasn't a big drinker, do you think that was sort of holding you kind of accountable, or like why was your behavior so different at home?
I mean, I would drink with my friends when I was home, but it wouldn't be crazy every night out till 2 a.m. or whatever, right? We might go out for wings or something like that, might have a few, but never anything too serious. But when I was on the road, you're out with all the guys, and it was a big social party type environment. And you go to the bar after and you drink, and it's just what we got into. So
you did it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Again, as long as I was making enough money that we had, money for all the bills and stuff like that, then in my mind there was nothing wrong with that. So basically once her and I split up, and she was in Ontario, I was here, and I just started drinking every day. And it would start, in the evenings, just at home. I would go out to the bars with my friends, but the everyday, most of it was just drinking at home. And did that. And a couple years into that was the first time I rode off a vehicle. It was like, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. I blacked out, went around, it's a turn here they call Dead Man's Turn. The car was upside down in the field for 4 or 5 hours overnight until a fisherman driving, to go fishing in the morning saw the car and they called it. I was in ICU for 5 days.
You were in the car
And
for that long?
yeah, I was in the
You
car upside down.
blacked out? Or just
Yeah,
couldn't
blacked
escape?
out. I don't remember. I remember leaving the bar,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember the initial part of the trip. I don't remember anything after that. And I came to enough. I have a bit of a memory of being in the hospital when they were cutting my clothes off.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I don't remember anything about the hospital till I woke up in ICU 5 days later.
We got a comment coming in here.
Facebook comment from Brandon Proctor, says, listening to your podcasts helps my sobriety journey. Thanks so much.
We've got Sober Now in the chat too.
We sure do. And I'd also like to point out, though I haven't had a chance to transfer it over, a comment from Will Jameson says, been following your posts. First podcast tonight. Awesome platform, guys. This stuff saves lives.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Will.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk now about after the accident that led you into recovery. Now, it sounds to me like it wasn't even the event that did it, because I mean you've dumped vehicles before and things like that. So, but was it exclusively that you saw the wreck and that's sort of what clued you in, or was it that you saw the wreck and your wife, whom you love and who loves you very much, was standing there right beside you looking at it?
I think it was a combination of seeing the rig, because that morning before she took me out to the impound. I got up that morning, and I tell myself, like, Jesus Christ, like, first of all, I was like, I need a couple of beers just to calm my nerves. And I'm like, Jesus, no, I can't do that. She's already pissed. She'll just absolutely lose it if I have a beer after what I did last night.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of held off more because I was scared of what she would say or what she would do, or if she was going to kick me out or whatever may have transpired. So I had it in my head that I knew she worked at noon that day. I was like, okay, I just got to get through till noon, and I'll be able to have a beer, calm down, and figure my shit out. We got out to the impound and got around, and I knew the truck was on its roof. I remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
I got myself out of the truck. I probably still drunk that morning, but I was in my head. I was telling myself, well, the truck was just on its roof. I'm sure they could just roll it over. Like, it's no big deal. Like, to be some damage, whatever.
That'll buff
right?
out.
Like this. All right, yeah, no, come right out. No. Yeah, no, that definitely was not the case.
Yeah.
Like, I had just written off, a 6-month-old vehicle, and this is the second vehicle I'd written off. On a separate occasion, I had another actual DUI. I've been charged with a DUI. And just all the ramifications are just starting to rain down. And when I saw that truck, I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to die, or or worse, I'm going to kill somebody else. Like, I have to stop. I have to do whatever I can do to stop, because, I've tried over the years, moderating. Well, I'm only going to have 2. I'm not going to have 15. That never worked. No, whatever rule I put in place or lied to myself and told me I was going to do, or would lie to my wife and say, yeah, I'm only, it's like the memes you see online, right? 1 beer is 2, couple beer is 6, a few is like 15. Like, that was my beer math. I had no off switch, and I see it so clearly now. When I was in it, I was in complete denial. And one of the reasons I was in complete denial, because the people I surrounded myself with, my friends, were just like me. Like, it was, that's just the life we lived. That's the way we drank. And it was just normal.
Yeah.
But now that I'm sober, the clarity now is like, oh my God, like, I was such a mess and so dangerous.
looking back on my own life now, like I used to have a race car. I had it was a 84 Mustang twin turbo 351 Windsor in it that I built myself. And I don't know if you know what that is or any, but a really powerful car. And a cop magnet. Like it had no hood, turbo sticking out, wicked loud exhaust, sound like a jet engine. And wouldn't you know it, it used to sit outside the bar in Saskatoon like all the time. And how do you think I got home? The bar will close down and then here I go down 8th Street drunk as hell in this 700 horsepower monster that cops are just begging to pull over. So I don't know how I got away with that for so long. So, but yeah, I can understand because that felt normal to me at the time. And maybe Donna, I mean, you drink and drive once or twice, right? Right?
Yeah, just once or twice. No,
Yeah.
me and my friends, we used to, drink our faces off at the bar, and at closing time, we'd chuck the keys in the air, and whoever caught it was the driver that night.
Sober enough to drive.
Oh yeah, no,
Yep.
I wrecked a few vehicles and drove over some curbs and did some really dangerous things. I even fell out of a car, and next weekend we'd be out doing the same thing because it was so normalized. Terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know anybody who didn't drink and drive, really. So tell us then, what was it like? You have the realization. Do you look at your wife in that moment and be like, I'm done? Or did it have to like take a few days to sink in before you actually pulled the pin on your drinking?
Well, I told her I was done.
In that moment.
And in that moment,
Mhm.
after we got home, I just said, I think I waited till I got home, but I said, yeah, I'm done. And I said, look, I said, I know you've heard me say lots of times I was going to slow down. I was going to do this. I said, I know there's no words I can say that are going to make me believe you. I said, but if you stay with me, I said, all I can do is show you every day. That's the only thing I can do because the words they're meaningless at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started, I called the 1-800 number for addictions and mental health here. Got a very wonderful woman on the phone, gave me a whole bunch of resources, list of AA meetings and number to call to get the full schedule, websites, a whole bunch of things like that. And I told her, I said, I just poured all the beer I had in my fridge upstairs. I said, I just poured that out. I said, I just need to do whatever I can. So she gives me all these resources. They have a mental health team that can be dispatched to your house if you want it or need it. At that time, I said no. I said I think I'm good. I got off the phone with them. I started, looking up the different AA meetings. I called my best friend and told him what happened, and he said, "Well, when you're going to your first meeting?" I said, "The first one that I can get to is tomorrow." He says, "All right, I'll come out. I'll pick you up. I'll take you in." And then I realized I had a full bar in my basement, which ironically is the room I'm sitting in right now, just without all the booze in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a bunch of beer down there. And I was thinking, like, okay, I gotta pour those out too. And then the thought starts coming to mind, well, you can have a couple while you're pouring the rest out. Then once you're done pouring them out, then you'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, I had enough brains to know that wasn't going to work. Because if that was the case, I just would have drank them all. I wouldn't have. I doubt I would have poured anything out.
Well, it doesn't matter where I'm pouring them. It could be in my mouth or in the drain as long as they're gone, right?
that would have been my logic back then.
Yeah.
So I called that 1-800 number back, and I got the same lady and explained the situation to her. And I said, I don't know what to do. She said, well, I can send the team out. I said, yes, please. I said, send the team out. I said, and she said, whatever you do, don't go down there. Just don't go downstairs. So kept myself busy upstairs, just went out in the yard, kind of walked around the yard, did whatever till they got there. And they came with me, and they came downstairs, and they helped me cart it all up. And, I probably had another 30 beer downstairs. Mm-hmm. So they helped me take it upstairs and helped me pour out every single bottle. and that's, then I finally felt like I could do it. I removed any of the temptation there that was in the house, and really for me, beer was my thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I still had a bunch of hard liquor, but I had no desire for the. I don't know why, but I had no desire for the hard liquor. It was just beer was always like I would wake up in the morning if I wasn't working. I'd be first thing. It didn't matter if I was up at 7 o'clock or I was up at 10 o'clock. First thing I'd open was a beer, and all I would drink that day would be beer. Could be whiskey mixed in, could be wine mixed in, or whatever. But that's how the day would start, and that's how the day would end.
Mm.
Then the next day I went to that, my wife got home that evening, pretty frosty reception.
I'm sure.
I don't think we slept in the same bed for about 6 weeks. And I don't blame her for being pissed. I don't blame her one little bit. But but again, all I could do was show her that I was serious this time and that I was going to do it.
When you went to this AA meeting, did it stick? Like, did you go back? Did you work the steps
Yeah.
and get a sponsor?
So I did go back, went to that first meeting and shared at that first meeting. Basically told them what had happened the day before. And, of course, people there are very supportive. And, one of the people there said, look, he says, nobody starts going to AA because their life's going great. They're not sitting by the pool, the sun's shining. And you know what? I think I'll start AA. That'd be a good thing to do. Like shit usually goes sideways. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I went there. I was a little bit limited, so I kept going back to the same meeting, which was a lunchtime meeting. And to be honest, I didn't know. I would hear people talking about sponsors, and I never knew how you got one. And eventually I clued in that you're supposed to ask for a sponsor or whatever. So I actually emailed. There's sort of an email address for AA and PEI, and I emailed said I'm really not sure like how I get a sponsor. Like, do I just ask somebody at the meetings? And their response to me was, try and go to more meetings. I didn't have the ability to get myself to other meetings because of my, lack of ability to travel on my own. But I just kept going. I kept going. Even without that, I still kept going to meetings. I, bought the big book and would read through that. And I don't think I was working the steps other than, step one where, admitting that we were powerless over alcohol. I had that wrapped up from day one. And I had a pretty strong conviction on that. And, throughout my sobriety, I've held on to that tight. And I know there's no such thing as one drink. I know I have absolutely no power over alcohol. And I accepted that pretty much from day one. And I think that's been a huge part of it. So I didn't work the steps, but I certainly familiarized myself with them. And probably about 3 or 4 months in, I found, online sober community. There I can go to 5 or 6 meetings a week. And I could do it from my own home, didn't have to worry about travel, and just, found it great and found AA is very much about, work the steps, get a sponsor, get into a big book study group, work them, which is great. Like I don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for AA. I'm so glad I was able to go there the first few months when I needed to start my journey. But once I got onto this online sober community, it's just real conversations about how this really affects us all and listen to other people talk about their struggles and getting guidance on what they do.
Like I was a very staunch program guy for the first 3 years. And when I started doing what I do now with Hard Knocks, like I started hearing stories that I started hearing a broader spectrum of stories that weren't all focused on the steps or how this worked or how that worked as it relates to the program of recovery that you find in church basements. Now, I'm not detracting from the value of these programs by any means, and in fact, every time I have an opportunity, I like to look at Donna's face and reflect on how I tried to convert her to a staunch program person, and it didn't work. It didn't even work a little bit. I think I got her to go to one meeting, and then she just like sort of ghosted. And here we are. She's got 5.5 years. I got 6.5 years, and it's, maybe we're in a bit of an anomaly. I don't know, but so what was it then? Okay, I don't want to drink anymore. That's it. Where did the rubber really hit the road for you as far as your healing goes, as far as recovery goes? Was there any aha moments that stand out in your mind where life just sort of got better because you had these realizations?
Probably the first 3 months or so, and when I was going to AA meetings, basically you always hear white knuckling it, like just trying to get through. There was, yes, one day at a time, but I had points, I had days where it was, okay, I need to make it this next 10 minutes. I need to make it this next half hour. If I can get till 2 o'clock, if I, just so on and so forth. And sort of piled in with this, I was starting to, on social media, I was trying to unfollow all of the pro alcohol pages that I followed, where everything was about alcohol before, trying to replace that with information about sobriety.
Yeah.
So just basically did that and found this online sober buddy community where started going to meetings and really getting some different takes on stuff. It wasn't about you need to do this. It's like, well, when it happened to me, I did this. So it was a more inclusive, way to go about it. There's a lot of parallels and stuff like that. And we talk about the steps. But one of the things that I think really helped, I guess there's two things. So somewhere around that 90-day mark, I came across the Your Sober Signs page on Instagram and started following that and seeing people celebrate being sober, not hiding it, not scared to talk about it, but being proud to be, whether they were 30 days sober, 10 years sober, whatever that was. And just came to the realization that, yeah, you can be proud to be sober and you can celebrate it. And, it's changed my Instagram name over to a sober handle. And I had a lot of friends that would follow me on that. And I had a couple of people reach out that they were struggling too, and they were looking for help to get, with stopping to drink.
Like your friends, like people that you drank with type thing?
Not the people I drank with, more, I guess, acquaintances like that.
Okay.
That core group of people I drank with. I have had one or two reach out and I think be more sober curious than that they're going to quit drinking or anything. But that having people ask, explain to me that they're struggling with alcohol and wondering what they can do to stop. And that really, you hear about it in AA meetings and even in the sober buddy community, but it's that giving back and that being of service. And I get so much joy out of being able to help other people. It just really, like, I even host meetings now. If there's only so many structured meetings, and we have some other meetings called community hangouts where some of the members will host them and stuff. And it just, and it's still the more I share publicly on whether it's on Instagram or it's on Facebook, the more even people I don't know that will either hear part of my story or hear what, some of the content I've created or content I've shared, and it resonates with them. That's just being able to help others sort of find their footing on the sober path, definitely makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I'm kind of curious.
Yep.
And maybe this was covered already, but have you changed line of work, or do you still do the same? No, you're still in the same. So,
no.
And how do you navigate that now compared to back when, considering the struggles that were happening at that time?
thankfully, my employer's very understanding. I've been with the company for a great deal of time, so and the owner of the company is a recovering alcoholic himself. So he's been sober for 40 years. I think the fact that I got sober made a difference. Had I continued to drink, maybe it would have been a different outcome. Maybe I wouldn't be there anymore.
I found it very interesting that you had a team come to your house and like help you
Mm-hmm.
dump the beer. Like to me, I don't know if that's something that really happens around here. Sounds like something maybe Prairie Harm might do, but
Maybe. It's
yeah.
certainly not something I've been made aware of to date. If anybody from Saskatchewan's listening, or Saskatchewan in general, if that's a thing, let us know.
Yeah.
That would be really handy information.
Yeah, I know when I was looking for help, it was hard to find until I had someone help me find it, you know. So for you
Yeah.
to just have a phone number that you could call. Now, we're talking about work. Now, were you still working at the same place? Like you were working on the road you mentioned earlier on. Was this the same company that you were working for when you had the rollover in the accident?
Yeah, it's the same company, but I had left for about 10 years.
Mm,
When I came back, I wasn't traveling anymore.
mm,
Sort of that was when I was still traveling when my ex-wife and I were married, but shortly after that, I had sort of stopped the traveling thing.
mm,
But the drinking really didn't stop.
mm.
Went from, started as a habit and became need, and I never saw it coming.
So
And
the reason I'm asking is because like I'm interested to know like how you approached it. So you have this rollover, you're gonna quit drinking. Um, a, a something that's really challenging to do is when you have to admit that you have a problem with drugs or alcohol is going to your employer with the fear that they might just find some other reason to fire you. I mean, I know it's the law that they can't fire you for being an alcoholic, but they can certainly
mhm,
off you for some other reason, right? So tell us
yeah.
about what that conversation like. How did you initiate that? And did you know that your boss was in recovery before you got sober?
Yes, I did know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made that call because part of my newfound sobriety is just taking ownership.
So say you knew someone was out there right now, someone was listening, someone's in a similar circumstance as you are, or
Hmm.
whatever, someone's trying to quit drinking, what would you like to say?
If you're in contemplating, first of all, if you're contemplating if you have a problem, you do.
You do.
Um, yeah, like if you're googling "Am I an alcoholic?" or anything like that,
The answer
then you
is
are.
yes.
If the answer is yes, if you're the biggest thing I could say is reach out for help. Um, you know, I reached out to a 1-800 number, got a bunch of
Mm,
resources, and the one thing I've learned, like when I got sober, in my mind, the only recourse was AA. That's the only thing I was aware of. AA or going to detox. And I know in detox, then you did your AA meetings and all that kind of stuff. And now being sober for 400 days and being exposed to the sober community, it's so much more than that. There's so many different, there's support groups, there's sober coaching, there's just a whole host of treatment options out there, or help.
mm,
I guess not treatment options, a better term is options for to help you. But the key is you need to ask for help. You don't
mm,
have to have all the answers. You have to have a willingness to want to stop and a willingness to want help.
mm. Got one more question coming in here from our friend Barb.
Hmm. And such a great question it is. She asks, do you think there's a way to shift the after-work culture of drinks at the bar? I feel like it plays such a huge role in normalizing it.
I absolutely think that it normalizes it. Society in general normalizes alcohol. Like you watch any TV show, any movie, and any alcohol commercial, like having a good day, have a drink. Having a
Mm-hmm.
shitty day, your wife left you, have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
um like
Watching the
it's
game, have a drink.
have a drink. Like everything is about
Wife comes
having a
back.
drink.
Have a drink.
Drink.
Have drinks with the wife.
Yay.
Yeah. So it's just, if you were to tell somebody, yeah, I quit doing cocaine. Okay, well, great, good for you. Well, I quit drinking. Well, sure, you
Why?
can't have just one.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
can you not just have a couple and put it down? Like it's
Like it's totally normal to not smoke crack, but as soon as you refuse a drink, everyone thinks you're weird.
Even when I quit drinking, my wife said, you're probably going to miss the social aspect of it more than the actual alcohol.
Do you?
And I did at first. That's what I missed, was that social. And there was a lady that was recently on Brad's podcast the last few weeks. And I sort of had this in my head, but I was never able to verbalize it. But she said the addiction was the social connection.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I heard her say that, I'm like, fuck yeah, like that's exactly what it was. Like that was other than, my best friend that took me to that first AA meeting. And don't get me wrong, him and I drank a lot over the years, but he wasn't one of my everyday drinking friends. But when I look and I think about my friends, people I've been friends with for 10 years, 15 years, 20, they're all people I know from the bar, from hanging out at the bar, talking sports and drinking. And at first I missed it. And now I'm to the point, and then, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months in, I could go to the bar and hang out with them for a couple of hours and either have coffee or have a non-alcoholic beer or something like that. But now, and then once I got my license back and I was able to drive again, I was worried that was going to be a thing, because the bar after work, that was my big runway into the evening, was stopping at one and or two bars at least on the way home. And I really worried that once I got my license back, that was a real test for me, because when I was having to drive to and from work with somebody else, that decision was taken away from me. But once that decision was back in my lap, I had to be very cognizant of not doing that.
Was there a pull?
And there was a pull, but I had enough work in sobriety put in that, again, we talk about playing the tape forward. So I stop at that bar, what's going to happen? Nothing good. So, but breaking that cycle is hard. And I'm thankful in a way in my recovery that I had no license for 6 months or whatever it was. That I didn't have that. It gave me time to build up, to use the cliche, tools in my toolbox for, not wanting to stop. And then, then I would stop. And at first it started out, I might stop once a week, once every 2 weeks. Like I didn't want to do it every day. But again, I would only be there for a half hour, 45 minutes, just to sort of check in with the crew, have a non-alcoholic beer and then be on my way. And and I've talked about this in our meetings, the last month or two, I just don't even want that anymore. Like I don't like that group of people, everything is all alcohol, which is what I was. I was one of the fucking ringleaders. I was the one saying, okay, come on, stay for one more. For one more. Oh, it's, the typical one for the road, like all of that foolishness. And now I'm just at the point where it's not who I am anymore. And I'm not trying to force anybody else to stop. You do you, that's fine. But I'm going to do me. And me being me is not hanging out at the bar anymore.
Did you ever find yourself trying to convert your drinking buddies?
No, because as much as I want to, nobody could have told me any different.
Yeah.
So, and I know that, like, until I came to that realization that I have no control over alcohol and I cannot have just one. Absolutely no. My wife tried to tell me that for years. She, she would ask me, well, do you have control over the alcohol, or does the alcohol have control over you? I would always swear that I had control. I had no control, none whatsoever. And again, I can very, very clearly see that now. But when I was in it, I was completely oblivious to it.
All right, man. Let's cap it there. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Where can people follow you? Where can people find you?
Best place to be Instagram, at Sober Savvy, 2 V's in Savvy. And I started that because a lot of my friends in our friend group would just call me Savvy for short, because there was a few Mikes in the group. And I clued in. I changed it to 2 V's from 1 because I wanted to be more like, I do a little bit of content. I share more than I actually create myself and try and post that. But I wanted to be more, instead of being business savvy, be sober savvy. So trying to make it a thing instead of a person. So, just slowly picking away at that. But yeah, that's the best place to find me, beyond Instagram at Sober Savvy.
All right, man. Thanks so much. We'll let you go. Take care, my friend.
All right. Appreciate you both. Thank you.
Okay, if you got anything out of tonight's episode, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. If you are not yet subscribed to us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. We go live every Friday morning, every Sunday evening. We got lots of content for you to catch up on. If you don't have time to sit and watch us, you can listen to our content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's it for tonight. Take care, everyone.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.